Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Groot, Customer Success Manager at the Software Improvement Group, host of today's Ask Me Anything session. With me, I have a very special guest, Marco. Marco, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, all. Good afternoon. Well, good morning for those that are joining from overseas. Marco Di Biase here. I'm a senior technical quality consultant here at SIG. I've been at SIG for, like 10 years by now. That's it. So, as you probably have understood by now, we will discuss today about this new security quality model and why this is important for your business. But indeed, before we delve into the details and we actually discuss about the quality model itself, the discussion, I will bring the discussion from a different perspective, just so that you understand why we are now with this model out and why we started doing this job in the first place, right? So having said that, this first slide has this person here shown. And as the title here says, I wouldn't blame you for not knowing this person, despite you might say, hey, Marco, look, this person has her name written on her chest. But this person is indeed Kristen Crowley, and this was the LA Fire Department chief last January. And why it is important here? And that is because she was basically behind the effort of mitigating the wildfires that spread over LA in January, where indeed, we lost, unfortunately, dozens of lives. We had hundreds of thousands of people evacuated, countless damage, and so on. Now, why would I start this presentation from here? And that is because she had the job of deciding which fire to attack and put out first. If you see this picture here basically tells you the situation at that time when, these wildfires started. And this is actually the key item I would like to discuss with you today. Firefighters, of course, have some, let's say, criteria to use to decide which fire to go out and put out first. And most likely, despite, of course, I'm not a firefighter and I'm not also a spokesperson for that lady, most likely they want to prevent the loss of lives as much as possible and clearly go there with the intent of preventing further issue to spread, right? So, for example, they see if a fire has the potential to cause even further damage than it already has, putting therefore more lives at risk if they were to spread further. So this is clearly, let's say, the situation where this chief LA fire officer was into. Now, if you think about the situation, this situation is actually not that much different from the average CISO that we at SIG talk to. Because if you do the parallel between her and a CISO and the wildfires spread all over, indeed, LA and the close areas, and a list of and the set of systems, the portfolio of systems that the average CISO is handling from, let's say, a security perspective, they have a landscape of fires and they need to decide what is their priority list, how to go and prioritize. And this is a kind of an important key point that they need to, let's say, to define first. And at this point, I would actually like to ask you, I would indeed open the first poll, because what I would like to ask you is basically how, which approach describes best how your organization is prioritizing this security, what I call fires. And you see here, there is a couple of options, and I would like to give me your answer according to what is actually going on in your organization. I'll leave you the poll for a minute, and then we see the answers.
And while everyone is reading the poll and filling in their answers. Also, in reminder that if you have any questions in the meantime, if you want to ask a question to myself or obviously to Marco, feel free to use the Q&A function within Zoom. That's the big sort of button. If you go if you navigate to the menu below with the question in it, you can ask your question in there, and from there we will obviously try to answer all of your questions that we have.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's still a number of people that haven't filled in the poll. So we're going to give it like another 15 seconds, and then we do. It's interesting to see. Like I can only see sort of the answers. It is quite spread out, and there is out of everyone that fills it in, it does have quite a neat distinct, like a neat spread. So that's that's very funny.
I see that as well.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the poll, and we're going to kind of share the results. So yeah, Marco, what would you say based on the results that there is an
this is an interesting
expert assessments?
Yeah, it's an interesting set of answers, and that is because when my colleague Asma did the security AMA a few months back, the answers were different. The majority of the respondents at the time answered indeed that there is no real security, let's say, approach behind the prioritization of, let's say, security fires, as I'm calling them here. She, of course, used a bit of a different, let's say, phrasing. But indeed, our audience today, Mark, looks a bit more, at least they know a bit more than the audience a few months back.
Yeah, but what I wonder, right, if I look at this, Marco, it says expert assessments from security professionals, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? You know, you have professionals in your organization with a specific focus on security. You want to listen to their opinions. But I can also imagine that these people are relatively scarce in most of the organizations that we talk to. And there's quite a number of systems. So how scalable is that actually?
Well, I would argue with you, Mark, it is not. If you always need to ask the expert person, what do you think about what should we prioritize first about security? Yeah, that's a very opinionated view. Of course, most likely this opinionated view comes with some data. But at the same time, when you have a portfolio of dozens, if not hundreds of applications, let's say the funnel is so much, let's say, big. The number of systems you can assess in a certain amount of time is limited. So you need probably a bit of a more, let's say, quantitative approach and some, let's say, criteria, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that is something that you're going to talk about next, right?
Exactly. Okay, so indeed, let's continue with our presentation. So again, this slide, and especially the question here on top of this slide, tries also to see aside from, let's say, the prioritization story, because how does this lady in that situation in LA knows when she's in control of a specific situation? And of course, firefighters, again, do have some sort of rules about that. Probably, for example, when the fire spread has been contained or stopped, and therefore, they don't see it going further. But in the case of our CISO, how does our CISO know when his or her security fire is under control, right? What is the, let's say, the number one number or the number one criteria they use to grasp whether they are in control of this portfolio of applications, if you, again, keep the duality with the LA wildfires I was doing before? And actually, behind all this, let's say, questions that we are now asking ourselves, is this quote from this work from Gartner from last year. And I'm just going to read it because it's quite interesting to see also what the wider industry is struggling with. Because organizations often struggle to develop a cyber risk management program that not only aligns with organizational goals, but also provides stakeholders with practical tools, methodologies, and mechanisms that can be seamlessly integrated into their daily operations. And this is, I think, where I'm going to kind of challenge all our participants right now, because I would be curious to understand those that answered that their security prioritization is coming from experts. How do they, let's say, see this practical tooling coming into play, right? Because that's not a practical tool. It's more like, hey, look, I have a trusted colleague that I go to, and that colleague is basically, or that, I don't know, a consultant or that external supplier, something like that, is indeed picking this discussion up and providing us, let's say, the prioritization roadmap. And basically, all this story is actually again a struggle, as it says here, because you always need to go between the left side of this slide and the right side. The left side is trying to, let's say, manage new findings. When you have indeed a piece of software that you are, of course, continuously developing and maintaining, you will have new findings, right? They have the challenge of indeed understanding what these new findings are, but on the right side, they also have the challenge of handling that. And many, for example, even tools, many static analysis tools, for example, are designed to flag a lot of issues, right? But the thing is that CISOs, they don't want this, right? They want something that gives them the let's say, the idea of control. And of course, also governance here has to play, let's say, a role in managing those new findings and understanding what they need. The thing is that one approach, right, you could say, hey, look, we just look at these, let's say, findings, right, and we understand what they are. But then again, if you think about having a very large portfolio of applications where you have all these findings popping up night and day, you need to understand a bit about how to approach that. So this, I think, is basically highlighting two challenges, right? The control over the security practices that you're currently adopting, because you need some kind of, let's say, governance or framework to use to steer and, of course, also set expectations. And then, of course, indeed, the control over that you see on the right side, right? Because the thing is that our CISOs will get asked from the board, hey, look, first of all, where are your risks? Second thing, are you having a plan on how to tackle these risks? And third, how are you actually monitoring the risk that you have right now in the portfolio of application? And this basically boils down to, hey, look, are you in control of the situation? Are we moving towards the right direction? And are we doing the right things? Because you can also move towards the direction you don't want to move towards, especially because you want this direction and this, let's say, moving towards something to be also transparent to others. If you're doing things behind a wall, let's say in your ivory tower, that's not going to happen. And it's not going to help also with your stakeholders if you are the average CISO, right? Having said that, indeed, the thing is that right now, these concepts, right, are very generic and very, indeed, high level. I would like to kind of move towards a bit more concrete things. Because then what is the strategy that you should adopt to demonstrate control and progress towards your goals? Again, this is also the, let's say, the kind of question here on top of this slide. And again, when you look at, let's say, a portfolio of application, you should, of course, start, you see on the left side, with prioritization and what I call attack. You, let's say, analysis, you do some analysis, you use some comparisons, and then you prioritize according to these results. And then you see on the right side, the part that basically we do here at SIG about automated monitoring, reporting, objective tracking, and optionally, of course, we can do much more. But in all this, and of course, you should adopt based on whatever capacity you have, you should grow control over time on your portfolio of applications. But I think here the key difference between what anyone is doing in the market, and even we were doing till a few months back and now, is this, right? This market benchmark and comparison. This is exactly the, let's say, key differentiator that now we have put in place into our platform. And of course, we can cover that later whenever we have some questions. That basically is enabling you to do two things, right? First of all, you, again, as this slide says, demonstrate control, and of course, you can track progress, right? These ratings will change whenever you are starting to tackle those security issues that we measured. And the control comes when you are starting to set objectives. This goes a bit beyond what I want to discuss now, but that's exactly what we, let's say, encourage you to do. And again, also the title of this slide says, just start, right? Mark, any interesting questions so far?
There's one question that has to do with the score, and it says, well, because I think someone just they saw the score, and it's like, okay, how is the score measured?
Right.
What powers the score?
Right. I can discuss a bit about this later. Let me finish.
Okay.
I'll cover this question in a minute.
Let's put this one on the proverbial parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. But please remind me, because I have some let's say some backup slides. I don't want to drag along this presentation too long. I only have just a few let's say closing note. Because again, why should you do this, and why again should you bother, right? Why does this matter for your business? And I put this picture of this workshop here because it's extremely tidy and extremely organized. And what this picture to me communicates is diligence. Whenever you are working at something, right? Imagine this workshop, right? Whenever it's busy with a few people, these tools will be all over the place, and that's normal, right? You need to use these tools to actually do whatever you're there to do. But at the same time, this workshop right now in this situation also reflects to me, at least, the commitment of, yes, we are working on things, but we are also putting back things to where they belong, right? You are prioritizing this in your workshop itself. And then if you again drag the duality with, let's say, portfolio applications, whenever you are bothered with security findings, this is what you should be doing, right? This is, let's say, the process behind going there, using the thing, but then also putting back and addressing whatever you're finding, tells you that you are focusing on genuine issues, right? So the risk concept is something that comes afterwards, right? We would like you as users to start using and start refining findings. That is the key item. Because in that sense, it's more like of a health check that tells me, or tells us, or tells you or your stakeholders the, I'd say, hygiene about security findings, right? The goal here is not to give you a judgment about something, but more like, hey, look, this is what we've measured. Now start refining these findings and try to achieve, let's say, the goal that you see now in the picture of a tidy and organized workshop. Okay, that's all I have indeed as a kind of introduction part for this session, Mark.
Yeah, does it make sense to quickly show within Sigrid of what that looks like? Because I think, like the concept is clear, at least also to me, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's also sometimes very nice to just say, okay, but well, we have this platform that's called Sigrid that does a security scan. What is now actually changing? Like what is now the difference that like I would see a week and a half ago versus today?
Exactly. So coming back to what you just said, Mark, so this is actually our open, let's say, source portfolio of applications that we demo to indeed prospects or clients. And this is actually the situation and the outlook till a few weeks ago, where we didn't have these ratings there. And what you can see here is that, to me, this picture looks like a complete mess, but you wouldn't know where to start from, because everything, or almost everything here, is dark red. You see here 42 systems on 84 are dark red. So yeah, you probably would have no idea where to pick this, let's say this priority list, or this indeed, what is the biggest fire here. While if you actually take this portfolio and you see it today, it looks like this. And immediately you can probably agree with me, Mark, that the situation here, it's definitely more nuanced. There is a few systems that have the darker red color. There are a few systems that have orange, yellow, and then green or dark green, right? And immediately here, if you are now, again, think about the duality with the lady in charge of the LA fire department, you would immediately know where to probably start tackling these fires.
Yeah. But there are still risks in these other systems, right?
Absolutely.
Based on the sort of the original sort of risk, like just amount of findings view.
Absolutely.
So how would you, because there's a question that comes in on this, is like how does this work? How like am I not still at risk even though it colors green or colors orange? Or
yeah, definitely. That's actually a good question, Mark. So the thing is that I would be very careful about talking about risks, because at the end of the day, first of all, right, and probably who knows SIG knows that we are basically our bread and butter is static code analysis. When you adopt a static code analysis to detect security issues, there is absolutely no way that tools are complete and let's say are kind of covering whatever you want to cover them. There will always be false positives, false negatives, and things like that. So when you are indeed approaching this, right, you should always be aware that there is no such thing as a complete security assessment. Coming to what you said, despite a system might be green, of course, you can still have some findings that would require a bit more care, a bit more attention whenever you look into them. And actually, if you allow me to move actually to our platform, just to show you what I'm talking about. Whenever you look at indeed let's say this is indeed the same portfolio I took a screenshot of in the slides. Whenever you look at this page and you scroll down a bit more, apart from the rating itself, which again should help you prioritize whatever you're doing in the portfolio, there is also the column about severity. And what you see here is that we highlight whether you are still encountering critical findings despite the rating might be, for example, in the market average or something like that. So in that sense, we still cover these, in a way, corner cases of rating tells you something, but in reality, you still have a few things that you should take care of.
If I now then come back to the question we parked earlier on, like how are these scores then sort of created? I think so. If I understand correctly, do we then look at the amount of findings or the severity of the findings to create a score, or how does that work?
That is a great question. Let me actually try to explain it with a concrete example here for, well, I'm just taking one system over here. So what happens is that we use to create, and again, this final score, this OWASP top 10 model that indeed covers security, let's say, categories in principle. And of course, here, I'll just remind our audience that the goal here is to get an indication of security. And then again, we, as I said, assess these risks using static code analysis. By default, of course, we are not guaranteeing the completeness, but well, there will be enough to do here. Again, just look at this system. And as I said, right, there will be false positives, there will be false negatives, and whatever. Now, what are we doing here to compute your rating? So this number here is basically a byproduct of looking at these categories and looking at what is the highest risk that we detect in each one of these categories. And then, of course, we do what we call, let's say, a bit of magic, in the sense that that's our bread and butter when we move from looking at findings and risks to ratings. And that's indeed where, let's say, the comparison with the market comes into play. This rating comes from using our benchmark set and then indeed translating all these raw numbers to a final number that will give you an indication of if you are or not too much in control of your security process.
Yeah, and I see another question coming up here, and it says like, I use the OWASP low code top 10. If you were to change a model, does that then also does that have an effect on your security scoring?
It doesn't. And
Okay.
the reason is that at the end of the day, when you are, let's open a finding here, right? What happens is that we associate each one of these findings with CWEs, right? And that is actually what we take into account to categorize and then assign the severity and therefore the rating of a system. And the fact that, I mean, of course, you might have different models even here in Sigrid itself, right? You can define and decide what you would like to use as a model, but that's just a categorization issue, right? It's not really changing the risk, right, that we identified that need to be, of course, refined, and then, of course, possibly tackled once you understood that they are indeed real risks.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're saying essentially we always kind of make it based on the CWE, and the grouping is just kind of a manifestation of that, and that's just a segmentation of the way you want to look at that grouping.
Yeah, at the end of the day, right, Mark, it's also a matter of having the data necessary to actually make these benchmarks.
Yeah.
Whenever we are in the lucky position of having hundreds of customers, but at the end of the day, fortunately or not, right, we see a specific slice of the market, and for most of these customers, this model is the one that actually fits best, and which also means that we have the most data for. And therefore, it's mostly applicable in practice. The harsh truth is that I would like to have ratings changing per model. Yeah, that's probably not really in the realm of reality, just because we don't have that many differentiations here with indeed low code or indeed even the ISO 5055.
Okay, well, but at least it already provides an interesting comparison, right? Yeah. So I see one or two more questions coming in, but I actually have a question of myself, because I typically advise customers on things like setting objectives, and like, okay, well, now you have your original scoring, where to go to from here. We typically in the past have said to customers, well, like, set your objective based on the amount of risk that you want to have for your type of systems, and maybe even compare that to like the business criticality of your systems, or like the deployment type. But now that we add this other lens of benchmarked risk, would you advise customers to place their objectives, or like to put their objectives in terms of absolute risks or relative risks?
No, I would actually encourage you to avoid, let's say, setting objectives on ratings. And the thing is that the perspective that I like to take is that the rating only tells you so much, right? Yes, of course, it'll tell you a bit about the relative risk that you are encountering towards the market. But in reality, you should really go and start again going and peeling off this first layer when you are, let's say, here. When you are on the portfolio level, this is only the first level of giving you a priority list of what you should do. And of course, this helps. But at the end of the day, you should still address all these systems that are now, for example, in orange, that are rating 2 stars, which most likely still have quite some things that you should start addressing and should start looking at.
Okay, so what you're saying is it's probably better if you want to keep your objectives at absolute risk level, but in order, if you want to say like, hey, what should I do tomorrow, then the ratings really help from a more higher level to say like, okay, which systems need a deep dive or require a deep dive.
Exactly, right? So imagine that you are now a new customer at SIG, or even an existing customer, and you were in the position I showed you before. Maybe I'll pull it up again so that we understand each other about what I'm, let's say, trying to communicate. Say that you are here, let's say a month ago, okay? And the thing is that here you have absolutely no idea where to start from.
Yeah.
But now what you can do is indeed move away from a view that tells you, hey, look, we have some critical findings in, again, 42 systems, to this, which tells you, hey, look, it's true that a few systems have critical findings. Those still stay, right? Those are still there. They will not disappear. But at the same time, it's also true that there are some systems which are in need of more care than others.
Yeah.
And that's why you should start, again, as I say, peeling off the onion and still explore the contents afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, by the way, I am I'm slowly starting to get through all of the questions. So if you do have questions for Marco and for me, do feel free to also add them in the Q&A box. But I did still get another question. So goes a little bit in the same direction as the one I just asked, but maybe a little bit more concrete. So what is the immediate next thing that we should start doing now after looking at the security quality?
All right, this is a great question, Mark. So I think, again, first of all, right, you now have an objective thing that you can use, right? And you should leverage this objective thing towards whoever is your next stakeholder. Say that you are a CISO, but that's easy, right? You can now go wild and start calling your colleagues and your teams about, hey, look, we have now this situation, we have now a priority list, we should start looking at it. Say that now you're a developer, what you should start doing. Well, that depends really on what is your priority list, right? Say that your team now has, I don't know, like 5 or 6 applications. You now have objective data to bring to, for example, your product owner or even to your Scrum Master if you are using Scrum to say, hey, look, we have this situation. Sigrid tells us that, for example, compared to the market, this system is of a lower quality versus others. We should probably start prioritizing security a bit more because.
Yeah, so it's really about kind of, it's also and I think that's also the power that we typically see, right? It's like that multi-role view. So there's something to get out of there for each role.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, the number one objective that we have is that we want to get you, whoever you is, moving. When you see that picture where everything is red, you are basically, you basically cannot do anything, right? Because you have absolutely no idea where to start from.
The proverbial deer in headlights.
Yeah, it's just you have absolutely no idea about what you should start doing tomorrow morning. And now I hope at least that with this rating, so you do have an idea about what should be on top of your list.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I think as well. And I think one more question that comes in, which I think also sparks a little bit that debate, is on, should we bring the security team in on this, or how should we communicate this to our security team? Because typically, right, well, our customers, they, if I provide a little bit more background to this question from the audience, typically we see that a lot of our customers are using Sigrid in their pipelines, and the whole idea also with security, also on shifting left with trying to resolve security findings before you go through take the full security scan before go live or anything, right? So, but I can imagine, and also from a security team, this is very interesting to understand that relative risk. So
Absolutely.
how would you communicate this message to a security team that is maybe previously only used to absolute risks?
Yeah, or even just based on expert opinion, like we
Or
understood
based on
from
expert
our
opinion, yeah.
exactly from the poll. Yeah, I would say that you can basically adopt two strategies here. The first one is, hey, look, you are using let's say the ratings, or at least this new way of looking at security as a leverage towards whoever is in front of you to say, hey, look, we need, for example, budget, we need time, we need more people, right? Whatever that means. Yeah. But at the same time, you can also see that as something that you can indeed track along. And that is exactly what I was trying to convey before when I said that when we speak to our clients, or in general, even when, again, I presented that slide from Gartner, the number one challenge is that people need practical tools that can be integrated into what they do every single day, right? And now I struggle to really find something that does this in the market, when you can actually do this in a way day by day. That's how I see it.
Yeah. So it's also about making those incremental changes and sort of seeing that also being reflected then in the dashboarding, also potentially towards management, right? That you can showcase also the impact of the work that you've been doing within the realm of security.
Which is also a matter of now communicating control. Again, think about the duality of those two pictures I showed you before. I mean, in the first picture, you basically communicate, we have absolutely no idea what we're doing, right? In the second picture, it's a bit, I mean, the risks are still there, don't get me wrong. They still need to be looked, understood, refined, and addressed. But at the same time, it gives you a priority list and a direction where to go for. In the previous view, if you had one single critical finding on a gigantic system, that would still color dark red. Right now, that's not the case. So it actually encourages you to get moving, because you'll get rewarded.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fun. So let's say before you had, I don't know, let's say you would start out with a relatively large system, you would have 20 critical findings. You would need to resolve all 20 for it to showcase a little bit difference in the way that it's been visualized. Whereas now already, like, because you're already resolving findings and refining findings, that will already have an impact on your score as you go.
Correct, right? Again, number one rule: get moving.
Get moving.
That is that's our objective, huh? That is what we set up to achieve, on top of course, market comparisons and whatever. I mean, we do at SIG. That is kind of our. We do give this for granted, but it's not, and that sometimes still needs to be underlined.
Yeah. We should open up a gym with the get moving principle. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that, like, to me, when like in my conversations with my customers that I have day to day, it indeed revolves around this, right? It's get started. It's make sure that you can also showcase the things that you are doing, because as you are taking up time to do this, because it does cost a little bit of time to make sure that your systems are secure. You can then also see the impact of that, and that's also something that you can then showcase towards other stakeholders internally, whether it be management or the business. We're obviously always requiring a lot of stuff from you, from the teams on a functional perspective. You can also showcase that you're actually moving a needle on a security, on being more secure with your portfolio.
Yeah, I find interesting the discussion about time, Mark, because if you think about it right now, say that you don't have any way of prioritizing your security, whatever security means for you, your time would go just in kind of analysis paralysis, because the target could still be the next one. And of course, your experts can help you identifying more or less risks. But right now, this is kind of, in a way, given. You just plug this in. You have this beautiful, let's say, overview of your landscape. You already know where to start from. And of course, you again need to peel off the onion. But that's already kind of time that you've saved by asking experts to actually do this job for you.
Yeah. No, like fully agree. I haven't seen any questions coming in the last 2-3 minutes. We are a little bit ahead of time, but I also want to be mindful that, that we keep this relevant and interesting for everyone. What we do have is another Q&A question that we can always pull up. But before we do that, I want to give people like 1 or 2 more minutes to ask any final questions that they have that can be related to the security model, but can also be related towards anything else security quality wise, that might be on their mind. And while I'm doing that, I have one more personal question for you, Marco. What I sometimes hear from customers, hear from developers, is a bit of an anxiety to refine findings and put findings on a false positive, because they say like, yeah, like I'm not a security expert myself. I think this is a false positive, but if I log it away, then it's my name behind it. And if it is a true positive, like what will then happen? What would be your advice as a security expert, also on this?
Yeah, this is also the duality whenever we are even discussing about maintainability and ratings in general. And sometimes I really am struggling to communicate to developers, clients in general, that the objective should not be the number. The number is just a byproduct of something that we do to achieve something, right? It's again like giving you or saying, "Hey, look, guys, my weight is so many kilos, but you don't know indeed my age, my sex, my height. You have no idea about who I am, right?"
Yeah.
That is the same thing about this, right? If I gave you the rating or security findings, yeah, that's just completely devoid of context. You need context. You need things that are, let's say, relevant to whatever you're doing. And again, chasing the number or indeed the security findings or refinement or things like that will actually bring you only anxiety. Because at the end of the day, you will always have new findings. You will always have things that are going to pop up from now and then. The important bit is that you have a solid process behind all this that will eventually take care of approaching, well, security or whatever we are talking about. So,
yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's about the process, right? So
yeah,
it's about, and it's about learning together.
absolutely.
And that's what I typically tell my customers as well. It's about getting a process of reviewing these false positives or risk accepted findings on a regular basis, learning from that, and extracting policies for that go into your security requirements going forward. So you can actually in advance provide a little bit better context towards the teams on what safe development in your context looks like.
Yeah, and I would also say that sometimes it's our responsibility to educate whoever is actually on the other hand, because sometimes if you see something red, hey, look, you immediately start ringing the bell of, hey, look, we probably are in trouble. Yeah, well, maybe, because that's not always the case. That's still indeed, as I said before, an indication of a potential risk. You still need to talk to someone. You still need that someone to tell you, hey, look, we refined, we looked at this, I don't know, we believe this is a false positive, this is a true positive, so therefore we need to actually do something. And that's where your process actually needs to be very mature. And of course, the process will always need to change according to what you're doing. The process is not something that you define today and you set in stone and you forget about it and you just follow it blindly. You need to actually make sure that your process is changing according to what your goals are. Actually, when was it? 2-3 days ago, I was discussing with some colleagues where a customer had a very ambitious goal, but yeah, in reality, their current practices were nowhere their ambitions. That's also important to discuss, right? You might want to go to the moon, but if you cannot walk, yeah, I'm not sure you're gonna get there. So
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, right? So you don't want to you want to also make sure that the goals that you set are actually achievable by the teams.
yeah, exactly. Otherwise, they're just indeed ideal numbers that you're having there just for the sake of looking indeed clean on top of or at least towards your own stakeholders. Say that you are a C-level person. But that will not really get you there. And that's again what I was trying to convey before. The number, it's just a number. And the rating, it's just a rating, right? Yes, of course, it has its let's say it's help, right?
Yeah.
It does something. But at the end of the day, if you are only aiming for a number, no, we are not on the same page. Our goal is to help you make your system more secure, right? It's not really helping you achieve a rating. The rating is just the byproduct of doing this.
I fully agree. We will be back with our next AMA after the summer, so keep an eye on our Ask Me Anything page, and we will also inform you about that in due time.